Oftentimes in the data center today, we want our server to be stateless. What does this mean? It means we want to be able to take that server and move it to a new blade. Maybe we have to perform some maintenance on the old blade. And we want that server to boot, and we want the hypervisor and the guest operating system and all the guest applications. We want them to think they're on the exact same hardware. We do this thanks to those resource pools we created in the last nugget. But in this nugget, we tie it all together with what's called the service profile. The service profile is that key container that holds all of the ingredients that dictate the behavior of a server in our data center environment. Obviously, this is a hugely important topic. Let's get started. Now, when you learn about service profiles and you learn that they contain our identity and state information and they can lead to stateless computing in the data center, you might make the mistake of thinking they're just a nice to have. But no, in the UCS system, every single compute node absolutely has to have one. In fact, we end up with a one-to-one relationship on these service profiles. For every compute node, let's say it's a B series server, you're going to have exactly one service profile. Now, one of the key reasons that every single one of your compute nodes is going to need this service profile is that these constructs provide the local area network and the storage area network connectivity. Yeah, when you look at what's actually in a service profile, we find tons of state information, of course, like UUIDs, WWPNs, MAC addresses, the boot order for the particular compute node, and then we find the virtual network interface card configuration. This is such important stuff like VLAN membership. Then we find the virtual host bus adapter configuration with the vSAN assignment and our worldwide node names and various policies. One such policy would be the scrub policy. What is the scrub policy? Well, when the particular blade is decommissioned, when you're taking it out of production momentarily, what happens to like the hard drive? What happens to the BIOS settings? Are those scrubbed? Are those erased or not? So the service profile is a mandatory component in our UCS environment, and it contains key information about identity and state and connectivity, and every single one of your compute nodes is going to need one. Now, at Cisco, the designers of the UCS system realized something pretty important right away, and that is that not everyone would be caring necessarily about stateless computing. Yeah, some would use the UCS system in a quote traditional unquote manner. They would have servers set up to be non abstracted. They would have these operating systems installed right onto the server blade itself with no hypervisor, with no virtualization. They would never plan on moving it. And that is why Cisco created service profiles that are stateless and stateful. If you right click the service profile node, and notice, by the way, we're on the servers tab right underneath the server's main node. If you right click service profiles, you can create a service profile using the expert wizard, or you can create a service profile that is just standard. The standard service profile does not enable you to create a stateless computing environment. You can assign only a single access VLAN. You can use the derived MAC address from the device only, the derived worldwide node name, the derived worldwide port name. You can only utilize the derived serial number or UUID. You can only have two devices in your boot order, and you can't really bring in complex policies to this basic service profile. But we're pretty excited that we can go in and quickly utilize this service profile and quickly assign a particular blade in our infrastructure if we're just interested in providing basic quick connectivity without all the advanced stateless options. So, do you think this is important? I'd say this is pretty important. I'd say this is something you would be questioned on in a certification environment, definitely. What is the basic service profile for versus what is the expert service profile for? And now you know. So we just witnessed the basic service profile wizard. Couldn't get much easier than that. Let's take a look at the expert wizard. We'll right click service profiles and we'll say create service profile expert. Now notice this is going to be much more sophisticated and it's going to allow us to tie in all of those logical resources that we created in the previous nugget. I'll just name this test real quick and we'll show you a few of the steps. So notice right away we can pull in the UUID pool that we created, right? And by the way, isn't this wizard great? If we had neglected to create that, we can create one right here, right? So you can quickly create one on the fly, if you will. You'd want to go ahead and provide a description for this service profile. This isn't mandatory, but it would be very, very beneficial so you have in plain English why you created this service profile, what you were thinking of, how this particular service profile should be used. When you click next, you advance through the wizard, and sure enough, you define your networking connection policy. Notice that this can reference a dynamic virtual NIC connection policy. So throughout this wizard, you realize that you can reach out to the policies. In fact, you can see them right here in the background, right? The policies that are available to us in the UCS system. You can reach out and grab those policies. Notice also in this wizard, you can do simple connectivity or you can do more expert type connectivity. You might be not using virtual NICs at all or hardware inherited settings. So lots of options as you step through the service profile wizard for exactly how your connectivity is going to function inside your network setup. We have storage. Okay, what are we going to do for a storage policy? What about worldwide names? What about the virtual SAN connectivity for our virtual host bus adapters? We have the zoning configuration. We have virtual NIC and host bus adapter placement as far as our physical network adapters, specifically our mezzanine cards. The server boot order. Okay, we can pull this in from a policy, the order that we will try and boot the actual physical server. The maintenance policy. The maintenance policy has to do with the scheduling of disruptive changes that you might make, like reboots or firmware upgrades. We then have our server assignment. We can go ahead and apply this service profile at this point to some existing server or to some pool of servers, and we could even create a pool of servers right here. Notice that we have the ability to go ahead and do this assignment later. So we're creating a service profile, then assigning it later on in the process. And then particular operational policies, like a BIOS policy, the IPMI management configuration policy. What's going to happen as far as our management IP address? Are we going to pull that from a pool? What's going to happen about a scrub policy? Are we going to go ahead and erase hard drives, for instance, when this service profile is unapplied to the particular system? So we'll finish our test policy. We're able to review many of the key settings, and we can say yes, and we just created a service profile called test. Now, notice this is not associated anywhere, right? So we see an associated state of unassociated. We see an overall status of config failure. Now, what is going on with this config failure status? Well, notice there's not enough resources overall. We don't have MAC addresses. We don't have all of the resource pools set up that we should have for this stateless service profile. And I wanted to show you this obviously on purpose because of the fact of the importance of that nugget we did previous to this one. You're going to want to do these in order. You're going to want to create all of the logical resources that your service profile might need before you go in and create your service profile. Now, we chose, and we'll just pretend that we have all the appropriate resources set up for this service profile, we chose to assign it later. How is that done? Well, sure enough, it's under your actions. So you have your service profile and you're ready to actually associate it. You'll go in and you'll choose change service profile association. And now you can go ahead and change the assign later setting to applying this service profile to a pool or applying it to one of your available physical blades. As you might guess, you can go ahead and disassociate this service profile. It's the option right here, grayed out of course, because this particular service profile is not applied anywhere. Now here's an interesting question. You have your service profile assigned to one of your B series blades. And now you go in and you make a change to that service profile. Is this going to be disruptive or not to your B series? And of course, by disruptive, we mean, will the B series reboot? Well, the answer is it all depends. If you were to change an identity, that would certainly cause a reboot. If you were to change a boot target, that would initiate a reboot. If you were to change a BIOS configuration policy or a virtual NIC failover policy, this would be disruptive. But there are plenty of changes that you could make via a service profile that would be non-disruptive. For instance, changing the vSAN setting on a virtual host bus adapter, or setting the VLAN setting on a virtual NIC, or changing a access VLAN configuration to a trunked VLAN configuration. So it really does depend on exactly what you are changing in the service profile as to whether this will be disruptive to your B series blade or not. Well, you're now fully educated on these service profiles. You understand their importance. You understand the two different ways there are to create them. You understand how to assign them. Let's wrap up this important nugget with a little final exam time. Here we go. Let's prove that we mastered the material in this nugget. Which of the following statements regarding service profiles in the Cisco UCS system is correct? So 4 statements, only one of them should be correct. A blade experiences a merge of multiple profile settings. Wait a minute here. In this nugget, we said there was a one-to-one relationship between compute nodes and the service profile. So this cannot be correct. We don't assign multiple service profiles to a compute node. The service profile wizard allows for stateless computing. Whoa, this is a poor option here. This is not clear. We know there's actually 2 wizards. One allows for stateless computing. It's the expert wizard. The other does not permit stateless computing. So I'm just not sure on B. It's really a poorly worded option. Let's check C. And this obviously could happen to you in the exam environment, right? So we're loving this strategy discussion. C, the service profile must be assigned at the point of creation. Well, we know that's not true. You can create your service profile and then assign it later, easily in the UCS Manager. D, changes in service profile settings might cause disruption. I love it. Yeah, there are settings that we might manipulate that cause a reboot of the compute node. That would be a disruption. So D is correct. Now we can definitively rule out B. Sure enough, they were referencing kind of the standard wizard here instead of the expert wizard here, and that's what makes this incorrect. So, there's a way to manage poorly worded questions. We just have to use strategy as we move carefully through the certification exam environment. Well, I sure hope this nugget has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.